Hi there. Well, I'm back with my lovely Keil Kraft Gypsy, a lovely 40-inch wingspan Wakefield design which I built from a Ripmax kit, which I wasn't overly happy with, but I will do a review on that, and hopefully you've seen the build videos and some of the issues I faced. But in the last video we got this to the airfield and we did some really nice trim flights and had a really successful maiden flight. Unfortunately, on the second flight, when I put 400 winds in, the rubber motor got caught up in the cables for the pull mechanism for the rudder, and they pulled the tail assembly off the seat at the bottom, pulled it forward, and you can see the cables are quite taut there going into the fuselage because it's all kind of wound up inside. So I've decided what I'm going to do is, I mean, in hindsight, you know, a wonderful thing, maybe it was inevitable, but what I'm going to do to fix the problem is bring the cables out the top of the fuselage here and down to the rudder, so they are really clear, well clear of that rubber motor. The more winds you put on, the faster it goes, the bigger the circle it's going to spin, I guess, as it's unwinding. So that's going to be the one job. I think I'm going to need my wire cutters because I think it's still wrapped around the rubber. So that's the first job. But also I did the maiden flight using the 12-inch prop that came with the kit. I was really interested to see how it performed. I didn't think it would be very good because the original was a 17-inch prop, and it kind of performed how I expected, really. It just span really fast, way too fast for a model of this size and with that rubber motor. So I've had enough of that prop. I've seen what it does and I didn't like it. So I'm going to be using this 17-inch balsa prop, and on the original plans that's what it specifies, a 17-inch prop, which is actually huge compared to that 12-inch, and will really slow down the motor and make it a lot more graceful and the performance a lot better. So I'm going to crack on now. First thing I'm going to do is get all this disassembled, and like I say, I think I'm going to need to cut those pull cables, which I'd need to do anyway, and then we'll have a look in a bit at the solution for getting the cables over the fuselage. Right, well, I've been looking at this now, and I've obviously opened it up, I've cut a section of the tissue and film out, and I thought I might as well take out a decent portion so I can check it's okay inside and do the necessary changes. Looking at the original line that the wires will have taken, I find it really hard to believe that the rubber motor swung up far enough and actually grabbed the wires. It just seems unlikely because they were so high. And I think what is more likely, now I've looked at it in detail, is that having added the 1/8 here, it made this step very small here for the retention of the tailplane, and it doesn't take much for it just to slip up, and I'm just wondering whether it slipped out of place and came forward, caused the cables to go slack, and hence got wrapped around the rubber. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the step here, and I'm also going to increase the depth of the fin here, because adding this 1/8 on has lifted everything up and it's not as secure as it was when I built it. So I think if I do that first, and then the cables I'm going to bring out of here, so I'm still going to lift them up a little bit so they're further away from the rubber. That's only going to be a good thing, and then they will just come out like that. And I think what I will do is probably just put a couple of corner pieces in here just to strengthen this spar, and then I think we'll be good to go. We'll just get that covered. We'll then have to look at the prop and get that sorted. Right, well, I'm now ready to start covering this up, so I thought it was a good time for an update. I've put in a couple of pieces of 1/8 either side, so that once I've covered this back up I can cut a slot in there for the wire to come out. I could have just cut the tissue and threaded it through, but I thought this would be stronger, neater, more resilient. And these little bits of 1/8 balsa aren't going to make any difference to the weight of the CG, I don't think. And if it is, we'll have to compensate for it. But that lines up nicely like that. So that's done. I will just put a bit of tissue over these slots. And now for the tail plane, if I've got an elastic band just holding the back down, you can see the dethermalizer there is coupled up. So if I take the bands off, and we can just see what we've done there. So I've extended that down on the fin. I'm going to paint that black, but I thought I'd leave it till we have a look at it. I've also put a couple of pieces of balsa there, which just raise it up, so there's no way now that's going to slide forward, which I think it possibly did before. And I've done a very, very slight undercut on that just to help grip it even more. And I'm going to paint all of this black as well, just so it blends in. But I think with this extension here as well, that is definitely going to stop it sliding forward. Because when I put the 1/8 on, it just lifted this, so it was kind of a marginal grip really. So I think that is going to solve the problem. So I'm going to get that covered, and then we'll get this new prop made up. Right, well the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cover this hole with laminating film. And I cut the laminating film to size top and bottom, or front and back if you like, to make sure that that doesn't need trimming, and it will just fit on there nicely now with a minimum of overlap. I will trim the sides, and I'm going to be putting this on with my digital Prolux iron, and I'm going to be using it at about 100, as cool as I can really, because I don't want to shrink it to stick it on. Now I've got these two metal blocks here because I'm going to try something a little bit different to hold it in place, get it nice and taut so I don't get any wrinkles. I'm just going to be putting a piece of tape there, and I'm going to be pulling this nice and tight and taping it down on this other side as well on a similar block, and hopefully that will just hold it in place now while I do it. And I can just move the blocks a little bit to get it right and twist them to tension the front there, and there, that is held in place quite nice now. I think it'll just make life a little bit easier, and once it's on we can just trim the sides with a scalpel. So my iron's at 101 now, and I'm just going to do the front and the back first, I think. So I'll start in the middle. Now, got to be so careful here with the amount of pressure that I put on, because obviously it's quite a weak structure when you're pushing down on those spots. I'm just going to warm this up actually. I'll take it up to 110, and I think that might just make it a little bit better. And now if there's a little bit of bag there, if I want to tension it, I can just press on that and it just tensions it a little bit. So do that corner. So I will get on and do this and go all the way around and get this nicely stuck on, and then we can get the tissue on. So it's just really the same technique as when we put it on to start with. Right, you can see this is all stuck down now, and you can see it's gone nice and dark around where we have stuck it down, so you can see it really is stuck. I've warmed it up to 136, and I'm going to leave these side bits on for the moment, and there's a few wrinkles here and there, but hopefully we will get all those out. The one thing about laminating film is if you heat it up and then just pull it, you can put pressure on and then pull it, it will pull the wrinkles out as much as shrink them. Trouble is, with this structure, it's a little bit hard to put quite the amount of pressure on that you would perhaps like to do that. So we may end up with a little bit of a wrinkle. We may not. Hopefully not. So to start with, I didn't want to, this is the problem bit, to start with I didn't want to heat it up too much. I just wanted to try and shrink it fairly gently, but if we get any real problems, then we will whack the heat up. And laminating film like this will really take quite a bit of heat. I mean, I've had it up to I think as hot as the iron will go, which I think is 200. Does go a little bit tacky at 200. But there you can see now all that is starting to come out. A little bit on this side still. Yeah, I think I'm just going to have to heat it up a little bit more. I'll take it up to 150 and hopefully get those wrinkles out. We'll have a look once it's done. While my iron warms up now, I'll just hang on. Okay, there we go. We can see this is wrinkle free now. And there is a little bit of a wrinkle just in these centre bits, but I don't care about that because I'm going to cut that out. So the next thing to do is to just cut out the film. So I'll just release that off the block and I will just run my scalpel nice and tightly down the side there. And we'll do this side. There we go. And I will just make sure that those edges aren't sticking up. And now we're ready to put the tissue on. Right, so we've got the laminating film done and I've cut myself a piece of the tissue and I've cut this exactly the same size as the laminating film. And I'm hoping it will expand very slightly just to do a little bit of so it's just slightly more than the laminating film, because the last thing we want is to get the tissue on and have a little bit of the laminating film showing through like that. It won't look brilliant. But I'm fairly sure, as with all tissues, this is going to expand, but I don't want it to expand too much or to cover too much, because I'd like to keep it on these joints. And then hopefully, well, I was going to say it'll be invisible, but it's not. I don't think it'll be invisible, but it'll be less obvious. So yeah, you can see that's expanded already and it's slipping around, so we're going to have to be a little bit careful. There we go. So now I've got this on here. Now these blocks I'm just going to lift up. I can just get hold of the tissue, the blocks, and I'm just going to put that on there like that and just try and stop it from flapping down on the sides, because I want to cut this flush like we did with the film. So I'm going to leave this a few minutes, and then once it's expanded and I'm happy it's in the right place, I'm going to be using exactly the same matte polyurethane that I used when I did the covering first off. So we'll come back and we'll have a quick look when it's done. That is just showing the film at the top. There you go. There, that's just right now. Let's hope it stays there. Right, well, that's had a little bit of a time now just to settle in, and I'm just going to blot it just to get off the bulk of the excess water, and making sure I do the sides as well. And we need to be careful when we take that off, because often if you're not careful you can start to lift the tissue up. Now I think that is looking good. So I'm going to get my brush and we're just going to brush the polyurethane onto here. And I'm going to do the whole of the top of the fuselage, so hopefully that will just help it kind of blend in really. There we go. I mean, this is the same, exactly the same tissue I used to cover it in the first place. It does look slightly different colour or shade at the moment, but hopefully that's just because the other tissue has dried and has time just to age a little bit. Right, but that looks like it's had enough. Just a little bit more there. What we're going to do now is we'll make sure there's some on there as well, and we'll pull that out. Pull that out a little bit. There we go, that's nice. And now I'm going to wait until this starts to harden off, and then we can just go along that edge with the scalpel in exactly the same way as we did with the film to trim it. So I'm going to leave this now. Actually, I've decided to trim this off a little bit sooner than I said, just because I fancy doing it, to be honest. So hopefully it'll go okay. There we go. And now we'll leave that to dry. And you can see I'll put a piece on here. I will wait a little bit longer before I trim that, but I'll do it exactly the same way as that. Right, well, I'm almost done with this now, and thought I'd just do a very quick update. You can see I've got the tissue repaired, and that's looking really nice. Got the slots out and I've cut out, and I've just used my trim iron to push the excess down into the slots and seal it on the sides to make it a lot stronger. We've got tissue where the slots were on the back, and you can see I've already started threading through the pull cables. I've got the servo arm here, and very little to do with that now. Just got to get the tail on and get those the right length. I've sorted a prop out. I've used the original nose off the Gypsy that I had the 12-inch prop on, but I've obviously made up the shaft again through the middle, and I've put a bearing and a spring on to that, so it'll be a little bit smoother running. And I put a locking device on the prop. Just see that there, hopefully. And so that will drive the propeller, but then when it goes into free, once it's wound down, it will just freely rotate on there. So that's quite a nice addition that we didn't have on the last one. We just had a little bit of a ratchet clicking on the front. So I will get this finished, and then we'll have a look at it when it's done. Okay, well, we're all done and dusted now, and we're ready to get back to the airfield. Although I may have to wait a while because I want to get a really nice day again when it's nice and calm. But you can see we've got the pull cables coming out there now, much higher up than they were before. So I think that should be a lot better. And as I said, I'm not convinced that the motor actually grabbed hold of them. I think they sagged down because of the tailplane coming dislodged. But you can see we've got the rudder working there nice and smoothly. We've got small movements if we need them. So that should be okay. And we've got this large 17-inch prop on there now, which I am dead interested to see how this is going to work. It's going to spin a lot slower, and so I think that's got to be a good thing. Extending the flight, slowing it down, and hopefully getting to a decent height. I'm sure there's a lot of trim that we've got to do to this. I'm sure we'll have to alter the thrust angle at some point, maybe a little bit of the CG and that, but that's all part of aeromodelling, isn't it? The fun of actually taking a model like this and getting it to fly sweet. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this kind of repair modification video, and I hope you found it interesting, and you'll come back and see me or see us next time we're at the airfield getting this thing in the sky. Thanks very much for watching.